Good morning. My name is Teresa McCarthy, and I'm a parishioner at Holy Spirit. Thank you for joining us this morning. I think most of you have already been with us over these last couple of weeks with the saints. And so the format is pretty much exactly the same as that we've been experiencing these last couple of weeks. We'll have an opening prayer, and then I'll share a little bit about myself, and then we'll go into the history of Mother Teresa is our saint today. And then we'll see a short video on Matthew Kelly's beauty, goodness, and truth. And then we'll read the scriptures from Matthew 13, and we'll break out in groups for 20 minutes on the 3 questions that are on the flyer, if you had a chance to download the flyer from the website. At the end of this session, we please ask, because this will be our last session, that if you haven't had a chance to fill out the evaluation. Thank you, Mary. The evaluation. Would you please do that for us at the end of this session? You will exit out of Zoom and then go up on the Holy Spirit website and plug into the evaluation that way. All right, let's start. I'm just going to recap on Tuesday's session with Linda in regards to Mary, Mother of Jesus, saying yes to God's call. Mother Teresa of Calcutta is the saint that I'm going to be sharing on today. She is whom we call a modern day saint. She's a big fan of mine and has been in my prayer for many years. She is also an inspiration when I go into meditation. Her words are, "Together we do things with beauty for God." Those are her words. Teresa, Mother Teresa has been a part of my life for many years. Over the last 29 years of being a Catholic, I have volunteered hours with the Catholic Church community, Catholic schools, Julian Street, Sacred Heart Community Center, Second Harvest Food Bank, Amigos for Christ, Village House, Hope Village, Casa de Clara, Catholic Worker House, Shower Trucks, Rooms for Christ, the Verbum Dei Sacred Circle prayer nights and retreats, and I've sponsored women in Al-Anon and AA for many years. I have become a follower of St. Ignatius and became a spiritual director of the exercises these last 3 years. I also love the writings of Henry Nouwen, Richard Rohr, and Greg Boyle. Service to others has been a part of my God journey, and I experience peace and joy in the act of service. For some of you, this could be a familiar story of serving God in your own lives. I am always asking God in prayer, "What's next, Lord?" While trying to balance overcommitment and boredom in my life, God is a sower of seeds in front of me, and I have to choose the one that sets my heart on fire. The World Food Bank estimates our food shortage in this world will be about 265 million people by the end of this pandemic that we're experiencing with COVID-19. My question is, what is my Calcutta? Through my truth, beauty, and goodness, I can take the next right act for God's people. With spiritual direction, I have been able to discern the right choice for me to serve. In my meditation, I hear the words, "poor and poor of spirit." My choice is to serve God's poor. And those are my personal experiences with prayer meditation that Father Brendan is encouraging us to do daily. Father Brendan said in his Reignite, we have our own God journey and fires that burn within us. Our practice of daily prayer and meditation creates an intimate relationship with God as friend. If we feel the interior darkness filling our soul, that usually is the evil one entering our head into desolation, taking us off trying to do good things for God in this world. God is goodness, beauty, and truth that fills our heart with consolation. Our heart's true path has God in the center. So right now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about where I got my material from. My sources of material today has come from 2 books. Rediscovering the Saints with Matthew Kelly, who will see his video later, and The Life of the Saints with James Martin, which Father Brendan gave us this book one Christmas about 7 years ago. And Matthew 13, The Parable of the Sower of Seeds. So now I'll begin my history that I've collected on Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa was Mother Teresa was first known as Agnes Boachachi and was born in Skipja, Albania in 1910. Both her parents were devoted Catholics. Her mother, Drena, used to take care of an old woman living next door who was ravaged with alcoholism and covered with sores. Drena washed and cooked for her. Years later, Mother Teresa would say that the woman suffered as much from her crushing loneliness as from her illness. Drena also counseled her daughter that charity should be done silently. When you do good, she said, do it quietly as if you were throwing a stone into the sea. Agnes, as she was known, had heard a Jesuit priest speak at a local parish about Catholic missionaries worldwide, and it struck a chord in her. Agnes had dreamed of a religious vocation as early as age 12. In October 1928, at the age of 18, she entered the novitiate of the Loretta Sisters in Dublin, Ireland. 3 months later, Sister Mary Teresa, as she was now called, choosing a religious name to honor Saint Teresa Lisieux, set sail for India. She would spend the rest of her life there. Sister Teresa taught Catholic school in Calcutta, run by her order, and their mission was to tackle poverty through education. It was there Sister Teresa experienced living conditions for children and families in great poverty. She wrote, "It is not possible to find worse poverty." In 1937, she pronounced her petulant vows for poverty, chastity, and obedience, and as was it the custom of the Loretta Sisters, she was now called Mother Teresa. She made a private vow with her Jesuit spiritual director to give God anything he may ask and not to refuse him anything. Before September 10th in 1946, Mother Teresa was exhausted from her work at the school and frequently fell ill. Her superior sent her on a short retreat to rest. During her dusty train ride to Darjeeling, she had what she calls a call within a call. After her death on September 5th in 1997, when her cause for canonization was begun, they discovered what happened on the train ride. Spiritual writers call this experience a locution. This means she heard words addressed to her from God. God said, "Wilt thou not help?" Christ asked her plainly to leave the convent and begin her work with the poor. Mother Teresa poured out all her worries and doubts and fears in prayer. She experienced loneliness, agony, and uncertainty in her prayer. But the voice she heard in prayer was firm. "Whilst thou refuse to do this for me," God said again. She was filled with this great sense of consolation. Mother Teresa enjoyed a deep intimacy with God in her prayer while on retreat. This is what Ignatius would call consolation. And after speaking with her Jesuit spiritual director and contacting the Archbishop, she requested permission to leave the convent and begin her adventures with the poor, and added a fourth vow: to serve God's poor. In April of 1948, she received word from Rome that her request had been granted. This changed her life forever. Shortly after Mother Teresa had a spiritual experience of consolation on the train rides, she described to her spiritual director and later in letters to Bishop Pierre a feeling of interior darkness, a feeling of distance from God, God seeming absent, heaven empty, and most difficult of all, her suffering meaningless. She said, "In her soul, I feel that terrible pain of loss, of God not wanting me, of God not being God, and of God not really existing." With the help of her spiritual director, this feeling of abandonment was identifying with the figure of Christ on the cross and his poor. This feeling of desolation was a constant challenge to push through and achieve all that she did before her death. St. Ignatius calls this consolation with desolate feelings. We, as well, will have these feelings in our own daily prayer life while doing goodness for God. Stay vigilant and don't lose hope, as Mother Teresa did. Here is an excerpt from James Martin's book on Mother Teresa's stubbornness on routine. Theologically and temperamental, Mother Teresa was a firm believer in the strict adherence to regulation. Details of discipline, tidiness in housekeeping, in religious dress, and uniformity of forms of prayer and devotion. She liked details to be fixed and adhered to. Like religious men and women in communities of old, she said. A missionary of charity could move halfway across the world to another community and still feel at home. Mother Teresa would say, "We care for Christ in his distressing disguise." The missionaries of charity do their punishing schedule in serving to the poor with full joy. Mother Teresa is known for her loving smile to everyone she meets. She said to the audience at Ala Magna of the University of Oslo, "Let us keep the joy of love, Jesus, in our heart and share the joy with all we come in touch with. That radiant joy is real, for we have no reason not to be happy because we have Christ in us. We have Christ with us, and Christ in the poor we meet, Christ in the smiles we give and the smiles we receive," she said. Daily meditation and prayer was an important part of a day's work for God. Taking care of one's mind, body, and soul keeps them going through work with joy and love. She educated herself in medical training. The first name of her order was the Little Sisters of the Poor in Calcutta, which then became Missionaries of Charity. Mother Teresa has opened many missionaries of charity in the world, has spoken at universities, has been on the BBC, and in 1979 won the Nobel Peace Prize. She said, "I am not worthy of this award, but by this award, the Norwegian people have recognized the existence of the poor. It is on the poor's behalf that I have come." In Rediscovering the Saints by Matthew Kelly, he writes about Mother Teresa was a champion of truth, beauty, and goodness. And so now I'd like you to listen to the video, and he'll share his words of wisdom on Mother Teresa. And be patient. We're working on
technology. Hey,
and
you got it. Okay. John?
I don't hear him, John.
Hey, John, turn it up.
No, we don't hear him. Yeah.
John, just turn it up.
Yeah. You need to turn it up, hon.
And what is before you right now?
Just turn it up, John.
Okay, I get it.
There you go. Let's see.
Thank you for being patient.
Here we go.
Two of the most common experiences
There we go.
in society today is being overwhelmed and being bored. And our faith is a cure for both of these realities. And perhaps we all fall into these things at different times in our lives. Our saint today is Mother Teresa. Lived an incredible life, demonstrated again the power of if you just love who and what is before you right now, and you do that 1,000 times a day, every day of the year, you just begin to have this massive impact on your community and in her case, ultimately on the world. And in the lives of all of the saints, we find these three things: truth, beauty, and goodness. And the reality is that when there's truth, beauty, and goodness in your life, you can't be overwhelmed and you can't be bored. When there's truth, beauty, and goodness in our lives, we're called to a simplicity and a balance and an integrated life. When we stop making time for truth, beauty, and goodness in our lives, that's when we get kidnapped by or seduced by the things of this world and the philosophies of this world. And that's when we tend to become overwhelmed, or when we tend to become bored. Because a life without truth, beauty, and goodness will ultimately become boring. And a life without truth, beauty, and goodness will ultimately become focused on the wrong things. And when we're focused on the wrong things, we very, very quickly become overwhelmed, because those things, they're not feeding us. They're not feeding our hearts, our minds, our souls. And when that happens, we don't have what it takes to be sustained. And so we do become overwhelmed. God doesn't want us to be overwhelmed. You know, the message of the gospel is do not be overwhelmed. The message of the gospel is do not worry, do not be afraid, you know, and by extension, do not be overwhelmed. But we find ourselves overwhelmed, I think, increasingly in modern society. And so when we do, I think we have to ask ourselves, okay, what place are we giving in our day for truth, beauty, and goodness? Are we taking a few minutes to read so that we can allow some beautiful truths to come into our hearts and our minds? Are we taking some time to experience beauty? You know, whether that art or some other form of beauty that inspires you in a special way. And are we taking time for goodness? To experience goodness and to share goodness. Because it's by focusing on goodness that we ultimately create the good life that God is inviting us to for ourselves and for other people.
Thank you. I also want to share a little excerpt that I read in Matthew Kelly's book. And he writes about Mother Teresa. She did have, and she writes, he did have a wake up. She didn't have to wake up each day and remember herself to be so happy. She had a powerful set of routines and rituals that she practiced with unruling discipline. These daily routines and rituals were habits of her heart, mind, body, and soul, and kept her grounded and focused. They reminded her of what mattered most and protected her from getting distracted and seduced and mesmerized by shiny illusions. So with that, I'll ask you to just close your eyes, and I'm going to read Matthew 13, the parable of the sower of seeds. That same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat by the lake. Such large crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat in it, while all the people stood on the shore. Then he told them many things in parables, saying, a farmer went out to sow his seeds.
What just happened? What just happened? Ron, what just happened? Ron. What happened? What happened? I didn't touch him, so I don't know. I wasn't even doing it. Hey, Mel. Shoot, I have a feeling that somebody. Let me get everybody back. Sorry. Okay. Sorry.
What song?
Teresa?
Yeah.
Teresa?
Yes.
The
Hello,
break.
Did it?
It stopped.
Oh, hello.
Hello? Hello?
Hi. What?
Okay.
Are you ready to
So-
go to break room? 'Cause
What are you saying hello to?
All right, Mary. I have a lot of people talking, but I need to know what happened.
We didn't hear you.
Okay, so down.
Okay, Teresa, let me. Sorry, your break room you went to a break room that you should not have. Teresa's not ready for you to do the questions. So if everybody can just listen to Teresa, then we'll go into breakout rooms.
Okay. So everyone can hear me? Are they all muted now? If you can
Yes.
hear me, please put your thumb up. Okay. All right. Thank you. So I'll start with the Matthew parable 13, the sower of seeds. That same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat by the lake. Such a large crowd gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat in it, while all the people stood on the shore. Then he told them many things in parable, saying, a farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering seeds, some fell along the path, and the birds ate them up. Some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no roots. Other seeds fell among thorns, which grow up and choke the plants. Still others seeds fell on good soil, where it produced a crop, 160 to 30 times what was sown. However has ears, let them hear. Whoever has ears, let them hear. Amen. All right, so we're going to go out into our breakout rooms, and we have the questions, and I think John's put them into the chat section.
They are. It is.
So if you click on the chat, you should be able to see 3 questions. The first question is, what are your daily routines that keep you grounded in God? And do you notice a difference in the days when you do not pray? What are your truths? And truths are the things that, like, are, I'm married, I have children, I'm either healthy or I'm not healthy. In my truths, I have 5. So my 5 values are God first, meaning prayer, meditation, and self-care is mind, body, and soul. Then my husband, my children, and my community. So that's how I identify my truth, is I always look at my values. So the third question is, what seeds has God planted for you today? And what is your Calcutta? And the question is, after this pandemic, there's going to be a lot of opportunity for us to reach out in our community and to be of service to God for the poor. And there'll be a lot of different ways to do that. So how might we best move forward with some kind of Calcutta for ourselves? So with this, let's break out into the breakout rooms.
Sorry, just before you do that, do you mind if I just say one word? This is Father Brandon.
Yes.
I just want to thank you all for joining. I know that it's been wonderful to see. I haven't been able to join every single day live, but I don't go into the breakout sessions. But it's been wonderful to see so many of you here. And I want to thank you for your faithful attendance. At the end of this session, I think Mary will then make announcements what our next stages are, what we're going to plan to do in the next couple of weeks ahead. But we'll make some announcements on Sunday Mass. But basically, I'll be doing another session in 10 days from now, and then we'll follow on again with that. So it'll be on the whole thing at the second mountain. So again, I encourage you to continue to do what you're doing, praying each day, and thank you for your faithfulness. All right, God bless.
All right, so John, are you going to put us, we're going to be 20 minutes in our breakout rooms, and I think Mary's going to pop in and out. I'm not sure, but,
Yes.
and so we have 20 minutes in the breakout room. We'll come back and have questions and answers, and then we'll close with a prayer.
I'm saying, Teresa, this is Eric. Normally we have a few moments to actually reflect on the questions and then go to the breakouts. Are we going to do that this time, or are we just
I'm
jumping
sorry,
into the breakouts?
Eric. That's correct. Would you like to take, let's take 5 minutes and just reflect on the questions. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Yeah,
No.
you're welcome.
And in the breakout rooms, you know that none of that is recorded, so your privacy is kept in the breakout room. So let's take 5 minutes and just review the questions and write some notes in our journal.